Lee, do we have everybody here?
Yes, everyone's here.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and start the meeting. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So welcome to the special City Council business meeting for Monday, March 29th, 2021. Let's rise, please, and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes. Councilman Scaringi,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
Councilman Strawn,
Present.
Councilman Scanlon, present, and President Rusnetti.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Okay, great. So now we have two legislative items on tonight. The first is introductory ordinance 21-29.
Hey, Madam
Consider
President, point of
defunct.
order.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Madam President, I would like to make a motion to open up a public comment this evening in case there's anyone out there that was deprived of commenting last week when our meeting had been cut short.
Second.
I'll say.
Okay, that's, right now, what you have before you is the fire legislation. When the other legislation comes on, if you want to ask to open that meeting up again, we'll discuss that then.
Actually, this is a city council meeting. Usually we do public comment. I know we don't do it at a special meeting, but it is just a city council meeting, right?
I've never known city council to do it at a special business meeting and it's not scheduled.
Well, that's why I made a motion.
Yeah, but there's no, can we do the fire and then we can get to, because you want to continue a meeting. Or
I don't
open up public comment.
Don't necessarily want to continue a meeting. I was hoping to open a public comment at this meeting. But
There's a motion on the floor that has been moved and seconded.
The question was it a proper motion? That's what I'm asking, whether or not you want to do that now.
I'd like
That's
to.
fine. You had a motion. Call the question.
Call the question.
Question been called?
Okay. Councilman Scaringi,
Madam President, point of order.
Sure. Councilman Scaringi, yes.
The motion on the floor is not relevant as it's not in the order of the agenda. My understanding, and court counsel can feed into this, and I'm not inherently against a discussion, but special business meetings, I believe by chamber rules, do not have public comment periods. And so a motion to create a public comment would not be proper. What would have to be made is a motion to amend the agenda to include a public comment. That's
Ken?
that's not the same thing.
I'll make
No,
that motion.
I understand, but I mean, I assume I took the motion to be that way to amend the agenda to include a public comment period.
Okay.
I had already stated that at a special business meeting that hasn't happened before, but people, as you often say, people can vote yes or no.
So Ken, just for clarity here, so what's the next step now? I called the question,
You
right?
have a motion, a second, the question's been called, so the clerk will ask, and then Councilman Scaringi had asked a question, but I think you can just move forward with the question.
okay. So we'll take a roll call to reopen the public hearing.
No, it's not to reopen the public hearing. It's to amend the agenda this evening to provide for a public comment period.
Correct. Okay, Councilman Scaringi,
I'm okay with it. Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Nay.
and President Rasnetti.
Aye.
Now, you have another problem because nobody is manning a phone, is there?
In
Wait a
theory,
minute, I'm sorry. This was, wait, I'm a little confused and my apologies. This was to actually have a public hearing or to
No.
amend the agenda? Just, my apologies. This is obviously kind of new, so if you can help me understand. I'm sorry. Say that again.
If I understood what Councilman Burns was requesting and what I think
Okay.
everybody voted on is whether you were voting to amend the agenda for this evening to include a public comment period as you may have at a regularly scheduled business meeting. Councilman Burns, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, so that's how I took it. That's how it was restated. I'm not sure that everybody understood it that way, but essentially you were adding a public comment period to this evening's agenda.
That's correct.
Okay, that isn't necessarily how I understood it. Did everybody understand it that way? I mean, I know it's a little confusing because we haven't gone through this before, so I want to make sure that everybody understands it clearly.
Is there anybody who felt they didn't understand it?
I had
Okay.
not it's clear to me now. Thank you.
Right. So the question is now that you have opened that, how will people communicate?
Ken, in theory, they could use my office line if that works for everyone.
Okay. Do you want
And to
to, well, I
clarify
assume
the-
I assume that your request would be to open it up in order before the legislation. So there's no other business, so I assume you're opening it now.
What about the legislature for ordinance, I'm sorry, ordinance, introductory ordinance 21-29? Shouldn't we do that first?
Well,
That
as
would
a
be okay
general,
Councilman
okay with me.
Scanlon? Oh, sorry, Councilman Scanlon.
Yeah. Ken, correct me if I'm wrong here. So they asked to open it up now, so we should open it up now, correct?
yes.
Out of order, but that's how they requested it. So obviously that's what we should go with.
Yeah, that's what I would, if the
Okay.
request was basically to add a public comment period to the meeting, then typically that would go before legislation.
Okay. So does the clerk go ahead and open that up?
The clerk can provide a number and we'll do what we normally do.
So what we normally do is what I'm going to normally say right now. Please be respectful. None of us should be verbally abused as we have been, and the meeting will end immediately if those rules are broken. Not the meeting, public comments.
Okay, so I'll read the number if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, the number to call in is area code 607-772-7035.
This is Councilwoman Riley.
Yes, go ahead.
Can we put that number in the chat as well?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
You're calling for public comment? Okay, what's your full name and address? Okay, I'll put you. Okay, this is Mary Clark from Laurel Avenue.
We can't hear.
I can bring the phone closer. Can everyone hear her now?
No, I can't.
Well, this is the only line to call in.
Is it on speaker, Lee?
Yes,
And it's close to your computer mic?
they're right next to each other.
Councilman Scanlon, do you have your hand up? I'm sorry to interrupt the caller. We can't hear very well anyway. Go ahead. You're muted.
Muted.
Tom, you're muted.
Okay, so since we can't hear Mary Clark, let me throw out this. Ken, if somebody called before, they can call again. There's no issue with that.
I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second. This is not a public hearing. It's not a public, you have amended the agenda to provide for public comment the way that you would before legislation in a regular business meeting, as opposed to a special business meeting. People may call up and talk about the flowers along Main Street.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll put her back on and see if we can hear better. Can you hear us now? Yes, we can hear you now, please. Yes.
I can't hear the caller.
This is the office line.
This is Councilwoman Friedman. I still can't hear the caller, but I do see messages in the chat suggesting that those that are calling in via Zoom, if we make an adjustment to the settings, can unmute themselves and call via Zoom. Am I the only one? Can other people hear the caller? I can't.
I can't.
No.
Lee, could that be done? People call in through Zoom?
President Resnetti, do you want me to try that?
Yes, you could try that.
Okay.
It's unfortunately that you didn't have some heads up, so you can really do this the right way and be able to, make sure that the callers can call in and be heard. I'm not sure if this can work out, but whatever you can do.
Okay. So if they'd like to speak, should they indicate so in the chat and we'll unmute them?
Yeah, or there's also a raise hand function as well. We can have people raise their hand and then maybe be called on. They can unmute, or the host can unmute them. And then after 5 minutes, the host can mute them again.
Okay.
Oh, I'm hearing from people that they actually don't have the reaction function. So I'm wondering if, yeah, so people in the chat are saying there's no hand raise function. I wonder if we can just maybe have people unmute one by one. Or maybe the host can unmute and then call on people.
Here, okay. So I think I changed the raise hand feature. So anybody that raises their hand.
I think that function is only available to panelists. Oh, okay, people have it now. Okay, great. Yeah, so maybe Lee, if you wanted to unmute people one by one or call on people to unmute themselves one by one, we can do it that way.
Okay. Okay, so the first hand raised here is Susie Ryan. I'm going to allow her to speak.
Hello, everybody. I appreciate you opening it up for public comments.
And please state, I'm sorry, please state
I'm
your
sorry.
address for the record as well.
This is Susie Ryan of Avon Road. I am the Broome County Legislator for District 11. I want to say I appreciate all of you for voting to opening this meeting up to public comment. I understand it's been very contentious, but your willingness to do so speaks volumes about your willingness to hear from the people of this community. And I think it's commendable, all of you. I appreciate it. I think everyone knows my views on police reform. I have looked over your 300-page document, and there is a great deal of good elements in there that I see a lot of promise and a lot of change and a lot of good things building on what has occurred in the past. So I commend you for that. I've worked on our county one, or was involved with that, and I felt that ours needed more, which is why I voted against it. I personally feel your reform plan has a great deal of promise, and I hope you will support it, develop it, and continue to allow community input in every way you can. So thank you very much, and good luck to all of you.
Okay, thank you. So the next person with their hand raised is Terry Renia.
Hello, my name is Terry Renia. I live on Chapin Street in Binghamton. And first of all, I want to thank you for opening public comment back up. I wish that folks had known it was going to be open. I think there is, while there is certainly a lot of contentiousness around this issue and a lot of struggles with getting public input, the one thing that I will say is that from watching the meetings of the collaborative, and I want to say from the start, I want to thank the folks who gave of their time to serve on this collaborative, but it was structured for failure from the beginning. It was the last minute nature of it. And in watching the meetings, there was not a huge representative voice heard in any of the meetings. I participated in the business meeting, and there was not one business owner of color on that business roundtable portion of the meeting. And I think that alone should tell us that there was something very lacking in the process. And I guess that's what I find the most disturbing is I'm not sure how we can look at any plan and consider that it is honestly representative of the community when it wasn't at all representative. For years and years and years, we've heard about the need to diversify the police department. And we've, spent money, and there's been initiatives to try and recruit a more diverse population to the police department. It has largely been unsuccessful. And I think a big part of it is that we're not looking at why folks don't necessarily want to be on the police department, not just Binghamton, policing in general. And it has to do with just an attitude about policing. After last spring and last summer around this country, it was a wake-up call, and it was a wake-up call for people to stop and think about why there is such resistance on the part of law enforcement to recognizing that there's problems. It's a much broader problem than just Binghamton, but since the only thing you guys have any control over is Binghamton's plan, let me tell you what I object to with this plan. Besides the process, which was inherently one-sided, very last minute, and did not solicit true public input across the board, not just on last Monday night's public comment, but throughout each of the sessions, there was not an effort to get real public input. My problem with the plan is this, and I don't have it in front of me, and I was not prepared to speak tonight because I didn't know there was going to be public comment, and as an example, one of the things they talked about is they're going to try and hire more people of color for the police department. Again, something that's been tried for decades. Another thing talked about in the plan is we're going to get officers out of their cars and onto bikes. The city of Binghamton does that every year in the spring and summer. That is not part of a new plan. That is something that happens every year. Those are two examples that I'm giving because I think that those are two examples of how this plan is not reimagining anything. It's remarketing what we already do. Finally, my last and biggest concern about all of the things in the plan is there's no measurable outcomes. Nowhere do we talk about
You have 1 minute.
Nowhere do we talk about what's going to happen if these things are not successful. Nowhere do we talk about raising accountability or oversight. And those are probably the two biggest things we need. I want to thank you again for opening up public comment. Once again, I'm sorry for my rambling remarks, but I would urge council members to really reconsider whether or not you want to vote for this plan when there's no way to measure whether or not you're having any success. Thank you.
Okay, the next person with their hand up is Mary Clark. I'll allow her to speak.
Hi, good evening. I also would like to thank you for allowing additional public comment. But again, I think this speaks to kind of the absurdity of our process. What we started this whole process in terms of encouraging community input and it has started so late. The first meeting was in January. We had held community meetings all summer long and all fall long, where we got input from community people, and we particularly did it in areas that are, affected more so by over policing and also by targeting and racial disparities and racial profiling. And when people speak from communities that are directly impacted by over policing, they have a very different perspective than people who live in a nice neighborhood on the west side. I was really disturbed that the process started so late, that and then out of the 300-page document, there was very little that came out of the actual input from people on the various Zoom meetings. Virtually nothing that we suggested after having 700 people out in the community commenting on what we'd like to see in real reform. There were suggestions made. As the previous speaker said, there was no accountability, nothing in the proposal, just niceties like, I want to, expand diversity on the police force. The problem with expanding diversity on the police force, you can do all the advertising you want. Unless you change the culture of your police department, you're not going to have anyone stick around of people of color. And 2 out of 3 people of color who have been on the police force have also filed discrimination lawsuits. So there is clearly real problems here, and nothing that this proposal does reimagines or tries to really actually do anything to change it is indeed remarketing. And I would really suggest that we need to have really community involvement and really look at real accountability. We put forth a proposal that has real accountability and real change in terms. The one thing that I heard numerous times through every discussion on every commission meeting was the need to have an independent review board, someone where we can complain to in regard to police behavior and stop police policing themselves. That was totally disregarded and turned into some mamby-pamby language of like, engaging the community more. That isn't what people meant, and they were very clear. Most remarks were disregarded in terms of real reform. And I think you guys have some commitment or some responsibility to actually look at real police reform, not just putting a 300-page document together that has like 7 suggestions that amount to virtually no change at all. And that's really disappointing. And that's why I would encourage you to go back to the drawing board, reject this proposal, and begin again with a real process.
1 minute.
That includes the community, that actually hears what the community has to say and not disregard real proposals. We had real significant things that were supported by the federal government's Civil Rights Division under the Trump administration. So it wasn't so outlandish what we were proposing, and none of it got into the final proposal. And that's disappointing. This is not police reform. This is not reimagining police. It's just really window dressing on maintaining the status quo that is unfair and is over policing. It does nothing to address the problems that we see in policing. And that's so disappointing. And the process for the people who were on the commission, they got to vote yes or no on suggestions that came from the mayor. They did not even get to
Your
put
5 minutes is up.
their own proposal.
Thank you. Okay, the next person with their hand up is Tina Chronopoulos. I'll allow her to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, super. Yeah, so you know who I am. My name is Tina Chronopoulos. I live on Laurel Avenue. Thank you very much to the folks who proposed to open public comment on those who voted yes. Thank you to the clerk for making it possible that we can speak to you. I really appreciate it. It's very important that you listen to people even when you disagree with them. I already spoke on Monday, but I just want to make some things obvious or clear to the folks who are listening. I went back to the draft plan for police reform to see if it was changed, or rather, if it was updated after the listening session this past Monday. And it doesn't seem to have been changed. So in some ways, public comment is, is window dressing as well, right? And some of us know this already, that, we tell you what we think, and then we mostly get ignored. So there's that. Another thing that I thought was important that I make clear once again to everyone who's listening is that the way that college credit is currently construed for those who apply to be a police officer at Binghamton means that you can come in with 60 college credits, or you can substitute those 60 credits with 2 years of active military service. Research shows that those who study humanities courses are able to develop more empathy and compassion for those who are other or different, depending on what kind of society you live in. And research also shows that folks who have served in the military, veterans, tend to come into police work with more of a us versus them kind of point of view, which, given the bigger picture, is not helpful, as I hope that you will agree. And in 2016, 17, or 18, I'm not quite sure, I am actually in correspondence with somebody at the city. The Civil Service Commission made a recommendation to allow folks who have work experience in fields such as social work, mental health care, to apply for a position as a police officer and to have those work years count towards the college credit. In other words, I was hoping that the draft plan might include opening up this provision. In other words, don't just let folks who have military experience substitute those 60 college credits. Why not allow folks who have mental health service, social work experience substitute for those college credits too? Because if you're truly interested in quote unquote diversifying the police force or changing its culture, that would actually be a good way to start. Another thing that I would like to say, and others have said this to me, but have said this already, that many of the ideas contained in this proposal have been knocking around for many, many years, like for decades. So the idea that this is somehow 21st century policing is completely ludicrous and basically just a PR exercise. If you really want to change the culture of the police department, one thing that you might want to do is actually start talking about what's really going on, and not many people do this, right? The idea being that white supremacy culture is at play. I know that this is very uncomfortable for white people to hear. Doesn't mean that everyone who is white is a bad person or nasty, 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 but we all swim in the same water that suggests to us, even if we don't realize it, that white people are better. And so if you want to make
1 minute.
change, then you need to really look at how white supremacy culture is pervasive in the police department. And I've been attending a trial just the other day where a police officer is suing the City of Binghamton / police department for retaliation because this person spoke up about the racism that's going on in the police department. And when asked by the judge whether or not they thought that the police in Binghamton is a paramilitary organization, they said yes. So the police is a paramilitary organization, both in Binghamton and nationally. And so if you really want to make a change, you need to acknowledge that this is a fact and that Black Lives Matter. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next person who raised their hand is Kanisi Black. I'll allow them to speak.
In City Council for opening up. Just want a bunch of people who didn't get to speak at the last meeting for protecting, and then meeting because you didn't like the land. Isn't really protected. With that, in regards to this piece of legislation, I just want to, folks have been saying that, you know, that nationwide we're seeing a diverse allocation of funds from to mental health, to this is window dressing. Left for in the city.
Sorry, this is Councilwoman Friedman. This caller is coming in and out, so I can only hear, it's like 2 words in and then 2 words cut out. I don't know if there's maybe...
It may be their internet connection, I'm not sure.
Good evening. Can you hear?
I wonder if maybe this caller could call in via phone audio instead of using internet. That might work. Coming from someone who often has audio problems on my own computer.
On my end, it says they're connecting to audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better. Thank you for your flexibility.
It's better? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Sorry about that. I don't know how much time that took up or how much I have left. I really just wanted to make the point that there's really not much here that's any different than what was being pushed for, what was it, 6 years ago? You did another study that examined police data from 2017 to 2019 that showed disproportionate arrests and stops of Black folks in the community. We showed that in 2015 with the stop and arrest data that was gathered, that there was a massive disproportionate response in policing in communities of color. And the same things were said back then. The piece of legislation that had popular support was shut down by the mayor saying that he was going to do an executive order around this. And yet here we are in 2021 with the same issues, facing the same disparities, and hearing stories that are even worse than we were hearing back then. I think you have a responsibility to the community, and the community's told you exactly what they want. So I don't really understand what the issue is in doing what you were elected to do, which is serve at the will of the people. The people, not just in our community, but statewide and nationally, have said, divest from police and invest in communities. And that's not what's happening here. There's nothing being done to address the root of the crime that's happening in the first place. We know that when people have access to jobs with good wages at that, right? When they have access to healthcare and alternatives to these institutions that consistently do harm and cause pain to them in the community, then I don't know what you expect to happen besides people having to commit crime in order to survive. So if you don't address the root causes of this, which is poverty, right? Because we know, looking at a lot of this data, that most of the crimes being committed are crimes of poverty. We know that violent crime has consistently been going down for decades. Most of the crimes that people are sitting in Broome County Jail for are primarily around drug possession, or drug possession with intent to sell, quote unquote, or stealing, or committing some kind of crime in order to pay bills or raise their family or make sure their kids have clothes and food or be able to pay for prescriptions. So unless something is done about poverty in the community, we are going to continue to have these same problems. And the response has consistently been shown from city council and the mayor's office that the response is going to just be adding more police, arresting more people, trying to expand Broome County Sheriff's Correctional Facility so that we can fit more poor people into the jail, where we know they're just going to be abused. So I'm shocked is what I am by the attitude of city council and the mayor. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
All right, the next person with their hand up is Rebecca Rathmel. I'll allow her to speak.
Good evening. I typically really prefer to have any comments that are going to be shared publicly prepared, but just hopping on to again voice concerns similar to the comments that I submitted last week. With whatever respect may be due, I have to say that it is incredibly irresponsible to move forward on implementing a plan that has garnered a massive amount of negative feedback from community members, particularly the households who are most impacted by policies that can tend to be harmful. I think every single outcome analyzed by the Finn Institute indicated disparities when it came to treatment by Binghamton police officers. And that is no small fact, no small fact at all. And I think the passion that so many folks spoke with last week demonstrated that. To pull this together, not only in the short time frame that it was pulled together within, but also to do so without consistently engaging the community in an active and inclusive way, on top of, and I expressed the concerns that I had with the report last week. Again, someone who deals with data outcomes and performance metrics and policy development in my day-to-day, to read a report that started out incredibly biased as opposed to neutral. So much plan is based on that report. all of section 4 in terms of the goals to enhance training. The Finn Institute's report specifically indicates that training, while it may increase the awareness of officers, does nothing to affect any change in their behavior toward individuals in the community. And so why are we spending more dollars on something that's not going to be ineffective, or that's not going to be effective, as opposed to truly looking? I mean, it feels like a circling of the wagons. It feels like this is something that, because of the state mandate, the city had to push forward, as opposed to something they actually spent time hearing from the community on. And that's to know that the plan was based on such a report that was put together, like what the Finn Institute came up with, when so much available data indicates that there are better ways to improving these disparities, continues to be incredibly troubling to me. On top of, I understand that maybe it's not common practice for me to learn about a public comment opportunity via Facebook, but that's also not best practice. It's not, to know that none of this was truly made accessible and available in a timely way it's frustrating, it's disappointing. And with no prepared comments, I mean, so I guess I would refer as well back to the concerns that I expressed last week. Like there's a clear bias in the report that this entire plan was based on. And so to move it forward means moving forward with that bias intact. And that is the exact opposite of the intent of this effort. Thanks for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next person with their hand up is Susan Link. I'll allow them to speak.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity of having a second public hearing. I too was part of the meeting last week, and I just felt so sad. Binghamton in particular was one of the communities that we all worked together. And the last 10 years, I see such a division between the us versus them. We're talking about marginalized groups. Well, I am a person with a disability, and to my knowledge, there was not one person with a disability on the redesign team. And there's a lot of us in Broome County. And 2019, 85% of people in Broome County Jail, as well as the city of Binghamton Jail, 85% were people with disabilities. Now, I really want to make sure you hear when I say I appreciate our police department. I know it's not an easy job. I know that. I also know, talking to some of the men and women, they too feel the frustration of officers not feeling like they're getting enough support. I get it. And since this redesign thing has come about, it's kind of really made us versus them even worse. Now if I go down the street and I wave to a police officer, they don't even wave. They don't say good morning. They don't say good afternoon. And this design was not about pulling us apart. It was supposed to be about all of the communities coming together, and we can do this as adults. Now, I grant you there were cussing last week, but that's because some of those individuals, and I feel the frustration as well. So I understand why some people got upset over it, but when you're saying the same things over and over, I speak to you guys all the time. I speak to legislators all the time. I speak to the governor all the time. I'm an active community member, and I'm frustrated because I can't seem to get people to listen to all of us. It has nothing that I have no respect for our police department. I do, on the contrary. The other thing that's missing in this redesign portion is, I don't know if anybody really paid attention to how much training these officers really get. I know because I was part of one of those trainings for years. They get a lot of training. If people don't believe in what they're doing in serving the public, No amount of training that you give them is going to make that happen. We can make it happen by working together. But, you know, I'm a people person, so I watch faces, I watch expressions. And even here, there's just a few of us here tonight. Last week it was even worse. You know, the eyes rolling and doing other things and paying attention. First of all, I found that very disrespectful. And when a city council person doesn't like what somebody's saying, they boop off the screen. I myself find that very disrespectful because I wouldn't treat you that way. And that's where some of the frustration in our community is coming from. We voted for all of you because we believed in you. We believed in your principles. We believed that we were all a community and working together. If there's anything I can do to help you guys with a transition so that we can have, well, let's face it, I didn't write comments last time because you're going to stick them in your drawer and that's going to be the end of it. I'm not even sure if you made any changes from what the community has asked. I haven't received any phone calls, and to my knowledge, nobody else has either, and said, hey, you know what? That's a good point. Why don't we sit down and talk about it? We don't have to do yelling matches. We don't have to scream at one another. What happened to good old-fashioned communication? We want to raise our children and our young adults how to communicate, how to work well as a team. We spend all this money in school to teach these lessons because it's very important, and to treat those equally. It doesn't matter if you're a person with a disability.
You have 1 minute.
Doesn't matter if you're a person with a disability. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or origin. We're all just people. But when you got the us versus them, you guys are over here and we're all over here, you're gonna get that constant battle, which doesn't need to happen. I thank you again for having another public hearing. I found out about it last minute, so I too did not have anything prepared. But thank you. I know this is not easy on all of you either. I understand that. And I respect all of you, but you also have to respect us as well. Have a good evening, folks, and thank you again.
Okay, the next person with their hand up is Manny Griffin. We'll allow them to talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I attended the last public meeting, was last Monday. I was extremely disappointed to have the public meeting cut short. You know, and it's extremely frustrating to, you know, live in a community where like our representatives don't listen to us. There are people calling and cursing. I work in the medical field, and if one of my patients came to me cursing at me or whatever, and I just decided not to listen to them, it doesn't take away from the fact that they have pain or something else is causing that pain. Just as if you walk into a door and you stub your toe, the first thing you're going to say is you're going to curse, you're going to say the F word. So I find it extremely disturbing that in this community, especially being a person of color, that like our voices continue to be ignored. Like we've said story after story of what we've been going through. It's like being black and white in this country. It's like living in two different worlds on the same planet. It's like just like a mother. Like I can never explain what it's like to give birth for a mother. A white person will never understand what it's like to live like it as a black person in this community. You know, we've called, you know, some of us are extremely nice, even when we don't have to be, you know, and nothing that we've said has made a difference. A lot of the people in this community that are black, people of color, they've given up, you know, on this council. They don't believe that anything that we say or do will make a difference in this council, you know. Going forward, I hope to see in the future that things happen, but this current police reform plan, it doesn't reflect anything that will have any change. The wording in it is they should do this, they should do that, they should explore that, but nothing is a solid change. The best thing that I've seen in that police reform is like a 7-bullet reform plan, is that there might be a youth organization for the youth. That would be good, but like that's independent of police reform. If we're talking about police reform, there's so much to talk about, right? I think a major problem is that like we see incidences like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor in that community, and like people in like communities like ours, they think it's like self-isolated to just that area, which no, like it happens here too. We're telling you guys it happens here. Like the first time in Binghamton, I had a gun pointed at my head when I was 9 years old. Me and my cousins were throwing snowballs at a car just for fun. We are kids, you know, like we shouldn't have been doing that. But you know, the officer responded. He told me to freeze. I just kept running. I didn't understand like that moment I could have died, but like stuff like that happens, you know, stuff like that happens all the time in Binghamton. And I at this point, I don't think that my voice is getting listened to. A lot of people in this community who are Black don't feel like we're getting listened to. I don't know what to say from here. So I would say thank you for your time, for like, you know, extending this public meeting, but it shouldn't have been ended in the first place. So I don't know. So have a good night, and I'm going to go put my kids to sleep, and I'll see you some other time in the next public meeting. Also, thank you to Viva for speaking up and fighting oppression, you know, no matter who it is or who it's from. I thank you, and Angela Riley, and you too, Joe Burns. Thank you.
Okay, the next person with their hand up is Catherine Staples. We'll allow them to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Kathy Staples. I live on Pine Street. So I attended the last public meeting, and before I got a chance to speak, the meeting was ended abruptly. So people are going to curse because they're not being heard. We had several organizations that held several public conversations where people could come and voice, you know, what they are experiencing, what they're going through, what they think could help. And like these organizations like put together this really handy list and even submitted it. So it felt like the city kind of waited to the last second and then went, oh yeah, we were supposed to do this. So like my 15-year-old, when it's time to do a project, same kind of thing, except you guys had a lot of information already. Like you've been given things that the community was saying, like, this is what we think would benefit us. And that was just disregarded. And then people called in and they were disregarded because there was cursing. So like we still have people disconnected from the community. We want people engaged. We want people to feel a part of this neighborhood in their community, in their city. And we want them to want to stay here and own a home here and pay taxes and work and like stay in our community because, you know, people pay taxes. That's great for us, right? But they don't want to stay when they don't feel connected and they don't feel like they're being heard. So when you're given an opportunity to speak, you expect people to listen. Just like when I speak to my children, I expect them to listen. It should be the same courtesy extended all throughout. So again, we've submitted a bunch of recommendations from the community. Could we maybe review some of those and add those into a reform plan that was put together much like a 15-year-old the night before a project is due? That's all. Have a good night.
Okay, the next person with their hand up is Katie Randau Tunstall. We'll allow them to speak.
Hi, my name's Katie Branda Tunstall. Thank you for having a second meeting for us to speak our opinions. I am a part of a local organization, and I attended a few different park meetings that we had as a community. And I just wanted to say what we voted for. The top was mental health. If we divest from the police, we need mental health. The next, there was a few really good ones. The next was Vines, but now that we have the grocery store coming in on the north side, that is so cool. and we appreciate that. The next I would say would be a domestic violence shelter for women or men that need to get out of the situation that they're in. I know because my friend is a police officer and she's told me that a lot of her calls are to domestic violence calls. And if we could take care of those before they actually become something, maybe we could change a lot of the calls that the police officers actually take. Maybe we could do, I'm not really prepared. I just heard about this meeting a few minutes ago. Maybe we could do like crisis cops. Instead of having armed police officers show up to divert a crisis, if we had resource officers only to the mental health or only to the nonviolent calls, we don't need armed people showing up in a crisis with guns and other weapons. It's scary. It's scary to the people that are going through the crisis, and it's scary for the neighborhood that's involved. It's not just trauma to the household, it's to the whole community. Also, I would say we need more help with mental health because of the drug crisis. We need more long-term rehabs. I know there's a lot of people suffering, and it's because their insurance won't cover more than 30 days or 28 days. But if we could have some of that money divested into rehabs, I think it would cut down on a lot of police involvement. I feel we should work together with the police. I work for a lot of community organizations, and I have friends that won't be seen with me anymore because I'm involved with these. So if we could work together as with grassroots communities, Binghamton has deep roots. We could bring back our roots as Binghamton. We just need to be more homegrown. And that's it. Thanks for hearing us. Thank you for having this second meeting. I don't usually public speak, I'm sorry, but you guys were awesome. Have a great night.
Okay, there aren't any more hands up.
I was muted, sorry. I'll take a motion to then end this portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. So now we can move on to introductory ordinance 12-29, considered in finance. Mr. Strawn, are you still with us?
Thank you, Madam President. I
Okay,
ask
you are.
for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 21-29, an ordinance to amend the 2021 fire budget to add one additional firefighter until August 1, 2021.
Second.
Any comments? No comments?
Seeing no comments, I'll call the question, Madam President.
Question been called. Thank you. Mr. Rogers?
Yes. Councilman Scaringi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley?
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman?
Aye.
Councilman Burns?
Aye.
Councilman Strawn?
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon?
Aye.
And President Rosnetti.
Aye. Thank you.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Moving on, we have introductory resolution 21-23 considered in the MPA committee. Councilman Scanlon, would you please like to introduce that for us?
Sure. Yep. A resolution to adopt the 2021 Binghamton Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Plan.
Do we have any comments?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman.
Actually, that needs a second first.
Right, yeah.
Second.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually prepared my comments in advance. I plan to vote unequivocally to reject this plan due to numerous criticisms I have of the process, the constitution of the collaborative, and the plan itself. I will narrow them down here and spend most of my comment time addressing concerns I have not yet voiced. First, let me talk about the process of formulating the plan. As has been said many times before, Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 203 in June of last year, giving municipalities 9 months to approve their plan. The collaborative was formed 6 months after that, meaning that we only had 1/3 of the time originally allotted to perform this important task. Can we really say that any plan formulated in such a short time frame will be thorough, well-researched, and thoughtful? Were any of my college essays written during all-nighters while I was fueled by coffee and vending machine snacks going to be my best work? Suffice it to say that all of the steps, each of which was supposed to take months on their own, now condensed to weeks or even days, were all done in bad faith in order to check off a box saying that technically, yes, we had done them. With this abbreviated timeline, there was no way to engage in this process meaningfully. This collaborative was doomed from the start. Secondly, how convenient that the collaborative contained representatives that had favorable views of the police and thought that nothing ought to change. Why would we include these voices? Why wouldn't we specifically seek out those who have been critical of the police and had concrete solutions already published? Why would we omit city council representatives who have been outspoken about how the way we approach community safety needs to change? Thirdly, the community has been almost entirely shut out from this process. Most of the collaborative meetings were private, and those that were public were difficult to participate in. I've extensively criticized the process of this collaborative already, so I do not want to belabor numerous points I've made previously in other comment sessions and other meetings, though it is evident that thus far, all criticisms from myself, my colleagues, and the public have been screamed into the void. There are 2 things I'd like to address, which I haven't yet. The first is, of course, the public hearing. During the public hearing, every single one of the dozens of comments we received were critical. We were supposed to incorporate that community feedback to tweak or change the plan, which would then be presented to City Council. Has the plan changed at all given the entirely negative feedback? Or have we, again, held a public hearing on the plan just to say that we did it? Truly, what was the point in holding a public hearing if we are going to incorporate 0 of the feedback? To pretend that profanity is equally or more harmful than racism is absurd and insulting. I'm reminded of the video footage I saw of 3 Binghamton police officers handcuffing a 13-year-old Black girl for allegedly spray painting a building while she screams for her dad. In the video clip, a 14-year-old Black boy with disabilities observes the scene, then is searched twice, and finally put in the back of a police van where you can hear him in crisis, banging his head against the inside of the vehicle. I wonder, which children are we actually protecting? To censor the public's righteous anger and frustration, citing concerns of hypothetical children being exposed to profanity, while actual children have been brutalized by the police, is shameful. Finally, I'd like to comment on the plan itself. It is a 7-page plan nestled within a 310-page document to aggrandize the thoroughness of the report. While I would like to commend those working on the collaborative who sought to make meaningful contributions, the end result falls flat. This milquetoast plan consists of bullet points that are almost all reactionary and require minimal effort, while simultaneously requiring the city to funnel more funds into the police department's almost $13 million budget. Things like post BPD's use of force policy online are bare minimum requirements, which could be done by an intern in about 10 minutes. This plan reinvents nothing. The impetus for reimagining the way we do policing in this state and country at large stemmed from the murder of George Floyd. He, like so many other Black and Brown people, LGBTQ people, Indigenous people, people with disabilities, and poor people have been needlessly brutalized and killed at the hands of the police. Would George Floyd's death have been prevented had the Minneapolis police posted their use of force policy on their website? In order to reimagine policing, or better yet, community safety as a whole, it is imperative that we examine the racist and classist roots of the police and the systemic racism endemic in the carceral state. To pretend that we have scrutinized, investigated, reviewed, and reimagined our police in 3 months, and that yielded a 7-page plan that will make meaningful change is frankly asinine. We have squandered this opportunity. I cannot, in good conscience, vote yes to a plan that contains convenient, surface-level solutions while simultaneously purporting to have reimagined the police. Thank you.
Any more comments?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Riley.
What?
Yes, I do not have a prepared statement like my colleague. However, I would echo the sentiments of many of the comments she did propose. I would like to take a message to kind of refresh the memories of my fellow council people of things I've said all along while highlighting Executive Order 203, where it says, create a plan to adopt and implement the recommendations resulting from its review and consultation, including any modifications, modernizations, and innovations to its policing deployment strategies, policies, procedures, and practices tailored to the specific needs of the community. And general promotion of improved police agency and community relationships based on trust, fairness, accountability, transparency, and which seek to reduce any racial disparities in policing. The initial purpose of 203 was to allow a authentic discourse in the community in which we live. And we know, again, it started in June. People were excited about the opportunity that they would have the ability to propose ideas based upon evidence-based strategies, community feedback, and look for a reimagined program. And I'll say program because it encompasses more than just policing. However, what we received as a council, without an ability, without the time or the authority to amend, was not that. Again, nestled in the 300-page document was a 7-page bulleted document. And yes, there are ideas, but we know that if we craft a plan, there should be measurable objectives, things that show that we have truly held to the promise or the guide provided by the governor. We waited till the last minute. We did not include all voices. And what resonates with me is a word that I have come to know quite frequently in this time is performative. Much of what we do here is performative. Make them think we're doing it so they can keep moving. And I've had enough. We cannot continue to represent the community and not hear the community. We cannot continue to move forward with legislation at the last minute that we do not review nor amend to fit the structure and the community in which we serve. We cannot move forward. And too many times you've seen me move off. You saw me move off the camera last time. I heard the stories and it evoked emotion. We had people crying about their children in this community. And this strategy seemed to me as if we were trying to check off a box and say, we do that. But if we do that, how come the community does not know that? How come the community still has questions and concerns? Now, I don't have the plan that people have mentioned, But what I do know is that any researcher, and many of us around the table have written publications about participatory research and held community forums to garner information for our research. I have never had the turnout for any of my research projects, even when I offered Starbucks gift cards, that was held, that equaled the response that happened at Rec Park. There were roundtables, there were different topics, and everyone, I know you like to say they're all part of the fringe, or they're all part of this subgroup, or however you classify people, but that's not true. Because if you're not there, you can't see who's there. The voices were diverse. The voices were representative of this community. And there was data collected. Data that many researchers on the university said, hey, I'll work with you. I'll use my grad students. We'll clean up that data and publish a report about city programming, city structure. And that is what we need. Could we have done this had we had the time? Yes. Could City Council have convened a meeting with the stakeholder committee to discuss what we wanted to see? Yes. Had we had the time. We tout that, yes, our plan is better than Broome. Why are we comparing ourselves to Broome? We touted that we hired Finn like Schenectady. Let's compare ourselves to Schenectady. We keep bringing them up. Schenectady started a long time ago. Schenectady also wrote a plan that had feedback from the committee about the community's responses to the questionnaire and survey. Look it up. It's on the website. Look up their meetings. They're on the website. Look at the collaboratives process when they had the closed door session. Those are on the website. Ours are not. So yes, I tip my hat to those that were selected for the collaborative working group. I know Tom Scanlon was there, Joe Burns was there, and many of my colleagues here in the community. And there were some great ideas. There was also some frustration about the pace at which the process was implemented and what was promised to be continued. We don't have any calendars. We don't have that detail. It was a promise. It was a promise. So when is the next meeting? What is the next step? We don't have that. So again, I tip my hat to those. I agree with my fellow councilwoman. There were great ideas that came from the community, like the Community Review Board. I think one of the judges wrote a statement about the Community Review Board on the collaborative. I don't have it in front of me to quote it, but again, support for different ideas that were left out of this 7-page bulleted overview. And I cannot support it. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Scanlon, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be very brief here, Madam President. This is an ongoing issue. So the collaborative is going to meet again. Matter of fact, Angela, the collaborative is meeting on Thursday. So this is an ongoing issue, and it's not done yet. It's not finite. It's not done on April 1st. It's going to continue to move on. And to me, this is pretty cut and dry at this point. It's either you vote yes to support what the collaborative put forward, the plan, and yet yes to support the Binghamton Police, or you vote no and don't support the collaborative, what they brought forward, and you don't support the Binghamton Police. And that's all I have, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm sorry. Councilman Strong, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the first thing when you talk about these issues is to understand that you don't understand everything. And I openly say right now, I don't understand everything. That's why I want to learn. But several callers last Monday, there were some calls that were disrespectful. There were some that weren't. And the people that, including the NAACP, the head of the NAACP, a social worker that called, that this isn't perfect by any means, but guess what? We're having a conversation and people are talking. When people are disrespectful and use obscene language, which by the way is against the New York penal law that corporate counsel sent, they would be physically removed from a meeting if that happened. I think it's preposterous to assume that's just okay and that's no big deal, especially when people were told several times. That's against the New York law. So I'm not sure, and we didn't make that law. That's against the New York penal law. The corporate counsel sent us last week. But a bunch of callers were very respectful and very reasoned. And the ones that were suggested that a conversation's happening. I keep saying, and I said it on the radio the other day, when people are disrespectful and do whatever, people go back to their corners and then we stop the conversation. And what is that? Who does that help? We're having a conversation. I think 25 people in this community, including 2 out of the 7 of us, put a lot of time into this. And I think that they did a good job. And one of the callers said, and I agree, Councilman Scanlon just said the same thing. This process isn't over. Why can't we foster a conversation and continue the conversation? What we have to send to the governor's office is due by Thursday. One of the callers tonight said, go back to the drawing board. Well, we simply can't go back to the drawing board right now. It's not possible. So why can't we foster a situation where people are having a conversation and talking to each other respectfully and keep the conversation going and hold accountable that they've committed to go through the end of this year? And my understanding, and Councilman Burns can affirm this, I think, is that both Jared Cram and Councilman Burns have committed that this will go into 2022, whichever of them is elected to be our next mayor. That's my understanding of it. So this conversation is going to keep going. So to me, this is not the end of the process. This should be the start of the process. And I think 25 members of our community worked really hard, and just disparage this whole thing and just making this about process is ridiculous when we're trying to have a good conversation, and we need to move forward to comply with this deadline. If we continue to be disrespectful, then people are going to go back to their corners and people are going to stop talking, and that doesn't help anybody. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Burns, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I was on the collaborative, and many of us did work very hard on it. I wish it had started earlier, like my other members had spoken earlier. Angela Riley said that, she was been talking about starting it way back in June, July, and we wanted it to start then. I mentioned it many times, and we were actually criticized for putting out, as the Democrats, we had actually been criticized for putting out some things that we would like to see done in the collaborative. But it doesn't get lost on me that the trial of the accused murderer of George Floyd began this morning. And today we're voting on this collaborative plan today. I mean, it's really quite amazing to me. Now, I believe that there are some very good things in the plan. And I've learned a lot. The last year and being on the collaborative, I have learned more about my community than in my 60 years previous. And I'm grateful for everybody that has come forward and spoke and teaching me about my hometown, But I believe that this is the beginning. Both mayoral candidates have said that we are going to continue. Whoever wins, we will continue it next year. And should we go back to the drawing board? I believe that what we've created is the drawing board. And I just, people just talk about the bullet points without mentioning it, I mean, we were talking about mental health, right? Investing in mental health. And the city of Binghamton already was providing, from the Broome County Mental Health Association, providing help to go with cops, or the cops would call them and then they would show up at the call, so that the police could turn it over to the proper person, and then they could go off and patrol and not spend time there. And the right person is going to get help, which is the most important thing. And now this plan, we are going to expand on that. Does it cost money? Is it going to cost more money? It might cost more money, but people are going to get help, and we need to change the culture of the police department. That's true, and this is the beginning of that change. Training. We talked about training. We're going to conduct comprehensive retraining and taser deployment, expand cultural competency training for immigrant and refugee populations, improve policies and training regarding police interaction with transgender people, require additional annual training for officers on implicit bias, cultural and linguistic responsiveness, structural racism, de-escalation, domestic violence, and other cultural competency disciplines. This is not something little. And it is a plan. And I'm on the collaborative, Tom is on the collaborative, and you all are. I hope we can maybe change out who's on the collaborative. We can get other voices on the collaborative. But we will be there to make sure that these things are really going to happen, and these things are important things. They're going to get. People say, oh, for years they've been trying to get more people of color on the police department. Well, now there's going to be a person whose sole purpose in life is to get people of color on our police department. I think that that's going to help things. Now, before this meeting, I was very, I'm getting pulled in different directions. I'm getting calls about, what we should do. So on the collaborative with me was Reverend Osby, Reverend Williams, both of whom represent a lot of people of color in their churches. And I called the President Nicole, the president of the NAACP. I spent an hour talking to them before this meeting. All of them encouraged me to vote yes, because they believe that the people that they represent, that this is the beginning. And the echo in my mind is James Baldwin, the writer from the 60s, who's saying, how long do we have to wait? We've waited 400 years. My mother had to wait, my father had to wait, and I've had to wait. I hear that echo, and I hear you, and I hear the people that out there that feel disenfranchised. And the other night, I didn't just hear swear words. I heard words of anger and disenfranchisement and poverty and all that. But I think that this is the beginning, and I want everybody in the community to hold me to it. I challenge you to hold me to it as we move forward. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay. Thank you, all of you, for speaking. I too agree that, yes, this is definitely the beginning of a very important process that we all need to come behind and support, which only really shows the support for our community. So with that, can I have, I guess, call the question?
Call the question, Madam President.
Thank you. Question been called. Roll call, please, Mr. Rogers.
Okay. Councilman Scaringi.
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley.
Nay.
Councilwoman Friedman.
Nay.
Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon.
Aye.
President Rusnetti.
Aye.
Okay, that's 5 ayes, 2 nays, Riley and Friedman.
Great, thank you. And so with that, I guess I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. We're adjourned. Have a